Who doesn't love a good scary story? Something to send a chill across your skin in the middle of summer's heat, or any other time. Scary ghost stories aren't for the faint of heart, but for those who are all about Halloween movies and all things witches or vampires, we've got spine-chilling tales for you from around the country. Welcome to New Fear Unlocked, and in today's video, we will share to you this true horror story that will give you chills throughout your bones. Also make sure to like and subscribe so we'll never miss any uploads like this one. I was 6 years old at that time. In a quiet room, if you press your ear against a pillow, you can hear your heartbeat. As a kid, the muffled, rhythmic beats sounded like soft footsteps on a carpeted floor, and so as a kid, almost every night, just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I would hear these footsteps and be ripped back to consciousness, terrified. For my entire childhood, I lived with my mother in a fairly nice neighborhood that was in a transitional phase. We lived in the kind of house you see being transported in two pieces on the interstate, but my mom took good care of it. There were a lot of woods surrounding the neighborhood that I would play in and explore during the day, but at night, as things often do to a kid, they took on a more sinister feeling. This, coupled with the fact that, due to the nature of our house, a fairly large crawl space underneath, filled my mind with imaginary monsters and inescapable scenarios which would consume my thoughts when the footsteps awoke me. I told my mom about the footsteps and she said I just imagined things. I persisted enough that she blasted my ears with water from a turkey baster once just to placate me since I thought that would help. Of course, it didn't. Despite all the creepiness and footsteps, the only weird thing that ever happened was that now and then I would wake up on the bottom bunk despite having gone to sleep on the top. But this wasn't weird since I'd sometimes get up to piss or get something to drink and could remember just going back to sleep on the bottom bunk. I'm only a child, so it didn't matter. This would happen once or twice a week, but waking up on the bottom bunk wasn't too terrifying. But one night, I didn't wake up on the bottom bunk. Before we continue, if you want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you will get updated with our thrilling stories. I had heard the footsteps, but was too far gone to be woken up by them, and when I was awoken, it wasn't from the sound of footsteps or a nightmare, but because I was cold. When I opened my eyes, I saw stars. I was in the woods. I sat up immediately and tried to figure out what was going on. I thought I was dreaming, but that didn't seem right, though neither did me being in the woods. A deflated pool float was right in front of me, one shaped like a shark. This only added to the surreal feeling, but after a while, it seemed like I wasn't going to wake up because I wasn't asleep. I stood up to orient myself but didn't recognize these woods. I had stepped on a thorn. By the light of the moon, I could see that they were everywhere. I looked at my other foot, but it was fine, and as a matter of fact, so was the rest of me. I didn't have another scratch on me, and I wasn't even that dirty. I cried for a little bit and then stood back up. I didn't know where to go, so I just picked a direction. I resisted the urge to call out, since I wasn't sure I wanted to be found by who or what might be out there. I tried to walk in a straight line and course correct when I had to take detours, but I was a kid and afraid. There weren't any howls or screams, and only once did I hear any noise that scared me. It sounded like a crying baby. I think now that it was just a cat, but I panicked. I veered in different directions to avoid big thicks of brushes and collapsed trees, and I was paying close attention to where I stepped because my feet were in pretty bad shape by that point. I paid too much attention to where I was stepping and not enough to where those steps were leading, because not long after hearing the cry, I saw something that filled me with a kind of despair I hadn't experienced since. It was the pool float. I was only 10 feet from where I had woken up. This wasn't magic or some supernatural space bending. I was lost. Until that moment, I thought more about getting out of the woods than how I got in, but being back at the beginning caused my mind to swim. I wasn't sure these were my woods. I'd only hoped they were. Eventually, things started to look more familiar, and when I saw the ditch, a dirt ditch my friends and I would have dirt-clawed wars in, I knew I had made it out. By that point, I was walking slowly because my feet hurt so much, but I was so happy to be so close to home that I broke into a light jog. When I saw the roof of my house over a neighboring lower set house, I let out a light sob and ran faster. I just wanted to be home. I had already decided that I wouldn't say anything because I had no idea what I could say. I would return to the house, clean up, and get in bed. My heart sank as I rounded the corner and my house came fully into view. I knew my mom was up, and I knew I would have to explain, or try to explain, where I had been, and I couldn't even figure out where to start. My run became a jog, which became a walk. I saw her silhouette through the blinds, and although I was worried about how to explain things to her, that didn't matter to me at that point. I walked up a couple of steps to the porch, put my hand on the doorknob, and turned. Right before I pushed it open, 2 arms wrapped around me and pulled me back. I screamed as loud as I could, "Mom, help me, please, Mom!" The feeling of being so close to being safe and then being physically pulled away from it filled me with a dread that is indescribable even after all these years. The door I had been torn away from opened, and a flash of hope shot through my heart, but it wasn't my mom. It was a man, and he was enormous. I thrashed around and kicked at the shins of the person holding me while also trying to get away from the person who had just come out of my house. I was scared, but I was furious. "Let me go! Where is she? Where's my mom? What'd you do to her?" As my throat stung from screaming and I was drawing in another breath, I became aware of a sound that had been present for longer than I had perceived it. "Honey, please calm down, I've got you." It sounded like my mom. The arms loosened and set me down, and as the man approaching me blocked out the porch light with his head, I noticed his clothes. He was a cop. I turned to face the voice behind me and saw it was my mom. "I'm so glad you're home, sweetie. I was worried I'd never see you again." By that point, she was crying too. "I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. I just wanted to come home. I'm sorry." "It's okay, just don't ever do that again. I'm not sure I or my shins could take it." A little laughter broke through my sobs, and I smiled a bit. "Well, I'm sorry for kicking you, but why'd you have to grab me like that? I was just afraid that you'd run away again." I was confused. "What do you mean?" "We found your note on your pillow," she said, pointing at the piece of paper the police officer was sliding across the table. I picked up the note and read it. It was a running away letter. It said I was unhappy and never wanted to see her or my friends again. The police officer exchanged a few words with my mom on the porch while I stared at the letter. I didn't remember writing a letter. I didn't even remember anything about any of this. But even if I sometimes went to the bathroom at night and didn't remember, or even if I could have gone into the woods on my own, even if all that could have been true, the only thing I knew at that point was, this isn't how you spell my name. I didn't write this letter. And there you have it. How do you think Kanye spends millions like it's nothing? If you were in his place, would you do the same thing? But before you go, please like this video, smash that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell for fascinating content. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.